Okay. So I'm just sitting in front of the window on this Saturday evening. It's starting to get dark. I've been meaning to make this video for a little while now. Um so I'm just going to share my story. Back in like October of 2018, it's like the last week of October. um, I started to experience some chest pain. And so it was like this little throbbing pain, I guess. Um, it was pretty persistent, like it never went away. Um, and it kind of just gradually started to get worse as the days went by. Um, I thought that it may have originally been stress related. Um, and I do have a really high pain tolerance. But by the time that I decided to go to the doctor, it had gotten really almost unbearable. So I go to my general physician and they tell me that, hey, if you're having chest pains, you have to go to the emergency room because you could be threatening like a heart attack. And we know that you're young, but we just as a precaution have to send everybody to the emergency room if you come in with that as a complaint. So I go to the emergency room. The doctor um does an x-ray. She palpitates my chest, and she does say that, well, I feel the muscle there and it just feels kind of tight and clenched up. Also, I see on your x-ray that it looks like you could possibly be developing pneumonia, but I'm not sure because clinically you don't have any other symptoms of pneumonia. So if you start coughing or anything over the next few days, then just go back to your general physician and let them know that you possibly have pneumonia. So that was pretty much it. She sends me home. Didn't have any medications or anything like that. Um, Literally, I guess like 3 days go by. On day 3, after I left the ER, I started to like cough. So I go back to my general physician and I tell them what the doctor at the emergency room told me to tell them. They do another x-ray, and so they say, okay, we're pretty sure that it's confirmed you do have pneumonia, so we're going to give you some um, antibiotics and steroids to treat it. Take it over the next few days, you should get better. um, if not, then come back. So I take the antibiotics and stuff. I start to feel better. I finish them. Literally, it's maybe a week later, I finish my course of antibiotics. 24 hours after that last dose of the antibiotic and the steroid, I start to feel worse. And by this time, the pain is like excruciating. So I waited, I guess, like another day or two. I was, still just going to work. I go back to the emergency room and I let them know that, hey, I, um, was taking this antibiotic and this steroid, and I was feeling better while I was taking it, but as soon as I stopped taking it, now I feel worse. Um, so they agreed that, that was very concerning. I was running a fever and stuff by the time I went back in. They did some blood work to make sure that, I didn't have some type of blood poisoning. They did another x-ray, and on that x-ray they saw that, hey, it looks like the pneumonia is still there, and it definitely looks worse than it looked a week ago when you first came in. So they do another imaging scan. They do a CT scan, which they say, we can get a better look at your chest. The doctor that I had that night, he just really kind of just brushed off my pain and, the fact that I'm telling him that, there's like this lump in my chest that I can feel. It's still there. It seems like it's getting harder. He's just like, oh, you're young, you're healthy, we're gonna find out what's going on with you, but I don't think it's nothing bad. So the CT scan comes back, and he comes in and he has to basically apologize to me, and he tells me, I'm sorry. It appears that you have a very large tumor on the left side of your chest, and it's about the size of a grapefruit. Like it's pretty big. And so at that point, I'm just kind of, in shock, and I'm like, what are you telling me? Are you telling me that I have cancer? And he's like, yes, it's cancerous. And so as you can imagine, I'm like pretty tore up in the emergency room. And he's letting me know, well, you can't go home tonight. We have to admit you, we have to treat you for the pneumonia, and we also want to figure out what type of tumor it is, because I'm asking about treatment and everything, and he's telling me, we can't say we can't say if you need surgery or chemo or anything yet until we know what type of tumor it is that's in your chest. So I'm admitted to the hospital that night, and I stayed in the hospital for about 5 days. During that time, they did some more tests, and they let me know that, hey, you seem to have spots in other parts of your body that are glowing up that show activity on the scans. We're not sure if they're cancer or if they're, related to the other mass that's in your chest, or if it's something else. Like, we can't really say or rule out anything at this point. I also got a biopsy done during that time, and during the biopsy they just try to take a little piece of the tumor, and they go and like culture it, and try to see where do they get a hit so they can figure out what type it is. So during this time, I'm looking for information, trying to figure out, what is it possibly that I can have, maybe this isn't really cancer. And I was also just looking like, if there's a way I can get like a second opinion or something, I want to do that. So I'm released from the hospital, and my biopsy results still haven't came back yet. They told me that it would be like another week. Within that week, I contacted another facility to see if I could get in, and they scheduled me for the next week to come in. So when I'm on the way to that facility, the original hospital calls me back to confirm my biopsy results. They tell me that, yeah, I do have cancer. The type of cancer that I have is diffuse large cell lymphoma, diffuse large B cell lymphoma, or also known as primary mediastinal lymphoma. So it's a cancer that primarily occurs in the mediastinal cavity, so that's near your heart. And in recent years, it's been very predominant in women. So now we know what type it is, and now begins the process of actually preparing for treatment. So to prepare for treatment, they give you every type of test in the book. They test your heart function, liver function, kidney function. I had to get a bone marrow biopsy, so they had to go in and actually drill some bone from my pelvis, to culture that to make sure that the cancer had not spread there. Um, I had to do all kind of blood tests to make sure I didn't have like hepatitis, HIV, any type of autoimmune disorder or anything that could upset the chemo. I got reproductive tests to make sure everything was healthy there, because I had a mass on one of my ovaries, and the type of chemo that I was preparing to get was also known to be very harsh on the ovaries. So at this time, it's toward the end of November. So I've been getting tests done for like 2.5, 3 weeks, just preparing to get the chemo. So one of my last tests, the reproductive test, the gynecologist is asking, do I want to harvest eggs or maybe get this shot that shuts your ovaries down during the chemo process? And for me, I mean, one, it was very expensive, and two, after coordinating with my oncologist, he tells me, you don't have like a month or so to try to harvest eggs. Like, you barely have a week or two for us to start this chemo, or you're gonna die. By this time, 3-4 weeks had passed by since I initially had first went to the doctor, and I could see the mass getting bigger in my chest. Like, every day it was bigger. By the beginning of December, when I started chemo, like, it looked like a large egg sitting in my chest. It started out, when we found it, it was about the size of a grapefruit, but by the time I started chemo, it was like the size of a small football. It was pretty big and growing really fast. And so I also had other spots from that mass that had spread over my body. So I had one like in my neck, near my thyroid, my ovaries, my adrenal gland of my kidney, and I think somewhere else. Like, I was showing activity in the pelvis. So one of the scans could show just glowing areas of like high metabolic activity, like basically from neck down to my pelvis. So now it's the first week of December. I'm about to start my first round of chemo, and I can make another video more specifically on that whole chemo process. But the type of chemo I had was REPOC, dose adjusted chemo. And so basically, for each round of chemo, I would pack a bag and just get ready to be in the hospital for about a week. The chemo would last 6 to 7 days. And so I would be in the hospital with the IV continuously pumping the chemo for like 96 hours. And depending on what dose I was on, once my doses got higher, I would have to get another medication after the chemo for about 14 hours to protect my organs from the chemo, so I wouldn't have like kidney failure or something like that. So the chemo was very, very harsh and aggressive because the type of cancer I had was very aggressive. Um, so yeah, I started in December, um, went through chemo until the end of April, and then I got my follow-up scan. That scan showed that I didn't have any more high metabolic activity, i.e., no cancer anymore that was active in my body. And so at that point, I was declared cancer free. Um, so now I'm in the process of surveillance where for the first year, I have to get a scan every 3 months. I just had my first scan a few weeks ago and it was still clear. Um, right now it is August, so I had that scan at the very end of April. Um, and so I've been cancer free for about going on 4 months now. Um, the recovery process is something else that I can make another video about because I don't want this to be too long. But I know I look pretty healthy. But that's not, the case. Like my body is still like very weak and fatigued from the chemo. But so that's all for now. That's all I can think of. If you have any questions about I guess just like the initial diagnosis and things like that, you can ask me in the comments. I will try to make another video if I notice a lot of the same questions. And that's it for now. I hope everybody has a great afternoon. It's getting darker outside, and have a good day.